Hello and welcome to tonight's recital for Chester Music Society, which I'm going to be playing with J.P. Ekins. So this recital is sponsored by Making Music UK, to whom we're so grateful for giving us something to do, and also bringing music to you in your home during these difficult times of coronavirus lockdown. We've got two pieces to play for you tonight. The first being Mozart's Sonata in B-flat major, K378. This one was composed in 1779, and it's one of 6 sonatas that he composed during his move from Salzburg to Vienna. And it's also, this group of sonatas, it's kind of different from his previous works for violin and piano. So the instruments are a bit more equal. There's actually more fun stuff for me to do. It's not just a whole piano concerto. So this one in particular is very elegant, very playful, very energetic, and full of surprises really. In 3 movements, he does a lot of twists and turns that you're not really expecting from what at that point were the Mozart sonatas. So yeah, it's a really gorgeous work, and I hope you enjoy it.
We thought it might be nice to play works that were generally quite positive and in quite sunny moods, although you'll see with the Brahms that doesn't quite hold true throughout. But this Mozart is such a frothy, effervescent work. And I think in many ways it's the precursor to the grand B-flat sonata that was to come not that much later, that of course is one of the titans of his chamber music output. This is a little bit lighter, but it has that kind of dazzling brilliance and love of life that the second one so embodies. Thank you so much for watching and for tuning in, for asking us to do this. We're in a house in Battersea, and it's very warm. But that notwithstanding, we're very excited to make some music for you this evening. That was the first, I don't know what that was, minute or so of Brahms's G Major Violin Sonata Opus 78. This was composed in 1878.
To 1879, in the summer months.
Yeah, which is lovely. He even writes that underneath the title, in the summer months. I think he wanted to give a very clear direction to us of the kind of vibe he was going for. He was in the habit of holidaying in the Swiss mountains, in the lakes, around this time. And he was getting so much pleasure from nature and from social aspects as well. We know he very much liked to gamble and play with the local musicians, and that the beers that he was discovering were very much to his liking too. I think that kind of theme of gentle ease is something that pervades, especially the first movement of this piece. And in fact, we wanted to play you the beginning just so you could hear how unlike most other openings of works this piece is. You know, normally you'd have a kind of brash, bold explosion of material, kind of really setting someone's stall out, arresting, catching your attention. I've never played a piece of such length and with such emotional power that has such gentle, humble beginnings. This piece has kind of special memories for me. I can almost remember exactly the first time I heard this piece. Had a recording of Ashkenazi and Perlman playing it, and I've never been someone who listens to a lot of classical music, I have to be honest, and just remember this first tune happening and me just thinking, wow, this might be the greatest thing ever. And so it's been an amazing process since then, getting to know the piece a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, out of all the Brahms works for violin, it's really special because it's actually, to my opinion, quite well written for the instrument. Brahms, it's actually written around the same time as his violin concerto, which is a mammoth work. It's still one of the most difficult pieces in our repertoire. It's huge, very long, very thickly orchestrated. You have to be immensely powerful and technically so capable. And it's so weird to think that he wrote this piece at the same time, because this one is just, the concerto is also lyrical, but this one is just so similar to the human voice. As JP is probably going to mention soon, it's based on the Regenlieder, and was it
Nachtklang.
Nachtklang.
Yes, the second and third movements have references to two different songs. But I think you make a really good point. The violin is in center stage here, which is also not that common for what is still called a piano and violin sonata. It's almost funny how few opportunities you have to rest in the first movement, so much so that even the page turns are a little bit of a feat.
You may see my music flying at some point, knowing how clumsy I am, so hopefully not.
I love the added jeopardy. I think that's perfect. I think that's an absolutely perfect point. The human voice has never been more to the fore here. Two of the movements are based on songs. We can talk about them more in a second. And the violin really does dominate the melody. The piano, more often than not, is just sort of massaging the tune, like creating a beautiful texture and harmony and sound so that the tune is always supported and sitting in the middle. You mentioned next to the concerto, he was of course working with the great violinist Joachim at the time, although Brahms was famously quite uncompromising. So I think that would explain why in the concerto, for example, the fact that it's not particularly comfortable he didn't really care about. Yeah. But I think the reason maybe why this piece is different is that it had quite a specific emotional meaning for Brahms.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I don't know, I can't really prove it, but I also feel that this is a work that he's not really trying to prove anything. It seems very sincere, it seems very kind of... Humble, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It's just an outpouring of how he felt at the time. I think, from what I've read, basically it was written around a time, as we all know, or if you didn't, you know now, he was very close with the Schumanns. So the pianist and composer Schumann had recently died, but his wife, also a pianist and composer, Clara Schumann, was still alive, and they had a very close relationship. During this time that he was composing this work, her favorite child whose name I've forgotten.
Felix?
Felix, that's the one. I was going to say Franz, but no. Felix had just had just died.
I think he had been very ill.
Had been very ill.
And another of her sons was committed to a mental asylum.
Yes, and her daughter Julie just died. Right. So not a great time to be Clara.
No.
And
I mean, you've said they were very close, but I mean, to all intents and purposes, they seem to have been deeply in love. Even when Robert Schumann was alive and married to Clara Schumann, there was this extra special relationship between Brahms and Clara that didn't diminish Clara's love for Robert, but which was always there in the background, a kind of very interesting, very intense ménage à trois, if you like.
Yeah,
and it was also a love that they never really acted on, even after Robert died.
Yeah, that's true. I think they tried, but I think they always really knew that it would never really work given the circumstances at the time for both of them. So I see this kind of as a symbol, well, a composition that he wrote thinking of her and trying to cheer her up, or at least remind her of the good times that they've had together in the past. You're better at remembering things than I am. He said something, she said something in particular reference to
he sent this piece to her, and I think you're absolutely spot on. There's so much of his feelings for her in this piece. It's so full of warmth and tenderness and love, but at the same time it's very bittersweet and has a lot of sadness that sort of comes more to the fore as we go through the work. And she said, I played it, and as soon as I finished playing it, I burst into tears of joy. And she also, much older, when she was about 70, said that if she could choose one piece to accompany her to heaven, it would be this. So there's definitely this very, it's a very meaningful piece, and maybe that's why it's so touching for us as well.
Yeah.
So the second movement is the first movement is a very tender affair. As we said, it starts with that beautifully serene melody, but it has its uncertainty as well. And in fact, every time we think we might be on our way to true release and pure joy, he just pulls the rug out from under us. I'm going to play you a couple of examples how he does that. First is quite close to the beginning. We build to a big climax, and then the opening tune comes back in the piano, but the left hand is dark and dissonant with the right, and all is clearly not well. And then similarly, maybe if we play from 50, we whirl into this marvellous climax, the violin is soaring over the top, and then suddenly two punchy chords in the piano change everything. And the beauty, the spell is broken, and we return to the slightly more faltering version of the opening theme with these stuttering piano chords accompanying us. Yeah, 50?
Yes.
Marvellous. I don't think it would be Brahms if we didn't illustrate a little bit of some of his rhythmic delight.
Ooh, yeah.
And it's nice that Ethan's in the room actually, because it was a particularly flamboyant evening with you when we were discussing, rather drunkenly possibly, Brahms' rhythmic delight that first got me thinking that this would be the kind of quite a nice thing to do for other people, so that's worked out rather well. So we start very obviously in 2 in a bar. 1, 2, 1, 2. The piano part couldn't make that more obvious, this wonderful chorale keeping time for us. And all the bits we're going to play now you heard in the opening, so we're just going to pick it apart now. So after a few bars, the violin begins some quavers, and then at bar 11, the violin starts playing in 3 in a bar.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Go for it. 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And at the same time as she's doing that, the piano's playing in 4 in a bar. So my part on its own is 1, put the 3 against the 4 together, we get this.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, in a space of 20 seconds, we started 2 in a bar, so 4 square, like we know exactly where we are, and then suddenly we start to sort of ride these waves of polyrhythms, something Brahms is famous for, and I mean, I wanted to shine a light on it, but most of the time when he's doing it, we don't know that's why it sounds cool. It just sounds amazing. He's defying gravity, I think, or that's how it feels to me with those bits. There's no verticality because we're not playing on the beat together ever, and the number of beats in the bar are changing, and so we're just kind of slaloming and riding, and it's so exhilarating to play. Cool. Maybe a little bit if we could touch on the second movement a bit. So the second movement already I feel like is a deep change of mood. It begins with a very noble, burnished piano tune. Pretty much the first time I've had some of the spotlight to myself, which is rare, and I'm certainly not begrudging our time together. That's the best time ever, in my opinion. But it is very cool, and I think it's interesting that he chooses that to be the moment that the piano speaks on its own for the first time. This is a very profound theme. It's in a completely different key. We're in E flat major, whereas at the start we were in G. And it really kind of sets up something a bit more pathos-filled, I think. Glorious moment, but you ruin the fun, really. Because when you come in, suddenly everything is constrained, and you're almost exclusively operating in semitones, and the music is much more pained. After a little bit of outpouring, you have a go at my tune, and everything's back in the major and wonderful again. And then, the middle movement is in 3 parts, 2 identical outer sections and a contrasting middle section. And the middle section is a world away from any feelings of hope and positivity. And there are some explosions and things, but the main feeling is that, for me anyway, of a kind of funeral dirge. It's got this kind of processional tread to it, and the dotted rhythm gives us this feeling of staggering. And what I think is one of the coolest things about this piece... Oh, the washing's finished. What I think is one of the coolest things about this piece is the way that a dotted rhythm ties the whole thing together. So if we remind you of how the piece started... have that dotted rhythm, pum, pa, pa, da, dee, da, dum. There it goes. It's fine, it's going to stop in a minute. And then the same dotted rhythm, or a very similar dotted rhythm, haunts us and stalks us in the second movement. I think Brahms was as good at this as anyone else in finding one motivic thread or one idea and binding a piece together like that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the last movement starts with the dotted rhythm again. Whoa. We're back in the violin now. We did want to mention the poem, right? This is the Regenlied.
Yes.
So this is Nicked. He wrote a song called Regenlied, and this opening tune in the violin is the song. And the lyrics of the song I think are particularly poignant, and I'm sure I'm misquoting, but it's something akin to, "Oh, tears flow freely down my face, reawaken in me memories of my childhood." And if ever a couple of phrases summed up Brahms's late, mid to late, moving to late period, that's it. The idea of the best of our times being behind us, slightly autumnal feeling,
coming close to the end of a long journey, and certainly not looking back entirely with positivity at the times that have gone, but at the same time being full of love, tenderness and beauty. Yeah, so you heard that dotted rhythm again, and it's even more similar to the opening movement, because in the opening movement we started with 3Ds, and here we start with 3Ds. But the mood could not be more distinct. I think there's just one more thing I wanted to mention, which was the other amazing thing in the last movement is that, well, no, two things. The last movement is very much violin again. You know, I've had my moment in the sun, that came in the second movement, and now once again I'm sort of, I don't know, like I say, the puppet master, sort of pulling the emotions behind this, behind the scenes, is you're the sort of tortured protagonist, you're the individual weeping, and I'm sort of, providing the backdrop. But the other thing is that so the last movement is kind of a rondeau, so that's where one theme repeats a lot, and in between it you have different episodes that are very contrasting and bring back different kind of memories and things. The first episode, I think, makes me feel like quite a kind of folky, country, peasanty dance. Maybe we could just play a bit of that. I'll beat to 29.
Oh, give me a minute. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's far away. I can't see one of this.
Yeah, and that's really effective because he's putting lots of punch on what we call the offbeats. So if we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, and what he's doing is this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's what gives it that kind of folky, peasanty feel. The last thing, I think, is that the next episode is really key, because in the next episode he brings back the tune from the second movement, the tune that was full of hope and full of promise, and it comes absolutely out of nowhere, to the point where I don't think we should even play it. I think that should just happen and take you as by surprise as it should. We return again to the sorrow, and then again, finally we move to G major, a key we've been searching for a long time, because most of the last movement has been in G minor. And once we get there, he brings us back to that special theme from the second movement for one final time. The speed of travel slows, and we have a moment of pure peace and reflection after a lot of trouble and trauma. And in as much as I think it's unusual for a 26-minute piece to start as quietly as this does, it's also quite unusual, I think, for a piece with so much emotional turbulence to end this kind of radiant sunrise or sunset, depending on how you look at it. But I guess that's the point with Brahms. Yeah. It could be either, or both at the same time. And the music just blooms and blossoms into G major and then fades away and retreats into the distance. A piece is very, very special to me, and such a pleasure to play with you.
Yeah, you too.
So
hope you enjoy it.
Yes, enjoy.
Sorry, that was the chair, not me.
That's right. It's a great sound effect. fun.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll say like when you're making music with someone, it's such a weird thing, right? Because actually we only met on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get to know someone so much quicker when you make music with them than when you talk to them. It's so weird because you can't play without giving so much of yourself that you lay yourself completely kind of, laid bare. Alex, man, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely loved that. That was immense. First of many.
Yes, hopefully.
I'd love to do some more stuff soon.
Definitely.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. It's been great fun. We're absolutely baked. I need a beer.
Yeah.
And have a lovely weekend. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.